It's not every day that I hear about a new product which I love so much that I can't wait to share it with you. The wonderful professional quality watercolour paints I'm going to swatch and talk about today are truly handmade by a British artisan, Mark Jackman, using traditional methods and the highest quality raw materials to give you vibrant colours and flowing textures. And they're vegan quality too. There's also a lovely story of how they came into being, which I'll share with you in this video, and I know you'll love to hear. And best of all, these paints are now available to everyone, and we have a special deal with Mark, so you can get them for 10% off using our discount code Diane10. So let's get started and dive into these paints. Hi everyone, Diane here. Welcome to my studio. Today I have a wonderful, exciting thing to do with you, and I can't wait to get started on this. I'm going to be swatching out, first of all, these wonderful Jackman's paints, which I have recently received. Now, Jackman's is an English company which started in 2019, just before COVID, and it's been started from scratch by a young man who has an absolute 100% passion for what he does. And I admire that so much, to find somebody who really loves what they do, is doing it to the best of their possible ability, and has produced fantastic quality paints, literally from his garage in his parents' house where he grew up, as far as I can figure out. And I've just listened to a podcast that he did with Ask an Artist, which is a podcast channel that you can find if you look online. His website is called Jackman's Art Materials, and he's also on Instagram and Facebook in the same name. But the podcast is well worth a listen, and I'll put a link to that in the description below, because it's entertaining and incredibly informative. And I have learned so much from that 1 hour of listening to him talking about pigments and paints and how they're made and the different qualities, and most fascinating indeed, what it is that makes a granulating paint granulate. I'm going to talk about all of that as we go along, and is going to swatch it out, all these colours. He's sent me 40 different colours, which he allowed me to choose for myself. So they're all ones I know I'm going to be using as we go forward with our painting. They are professional quality of the highest order, but they're not by any means overpriced. They are extremely reasonable. And if you're in the market for professional paints, please give him a look. He does demonstrations at all the art shows. I'm sure he goes to Patchings. If you're in the UK, you'll know what that is. I know he goes around to groups of artists in their venues and does demonstrations of how he makes the paints. And he's a very engaging speaker, very interesting, amusing, and very, very clever, I must say. He sounds like a lovely man, and I highly recommend his products. So let's get into looking at them. I'm going to, first of all, I'm taking this away for a second. I'll come back to that in a minute. I've got a couple of empty Meaden palettes here, and I often paint with tube paints straight from the tube into a palette, the colours I've chosen to do a particular painting at a particular time. And I no doubt will do that. I mean, as we go forward, without any doubt, there will be times when I say, okay, I'm going to take half a dozen colours, I'm going to squeeze them out into a little palette like this, or one of my other bigger ceramic ones, or there'll be times when I'm going to take half a dozen of my little dishes like this, preferably ones that don't have a crack down the middle, and I'll squeeze one colour into each one of these and I'll paint like that. It's another option. There are so many ways that you can use tube paints, and I think some people aren't aware that you can. If you have the tubes, one of the reasons why these are going to be so good for this is because they are in perfect balance as far as the humectant is concerned. They will dry when you put them into a palette, so they don't stay permanently sticky. Like the Michael Harding ones are very, very slow to dry. They've got more humectant. That's for another reason. But these ones are excellent if you're going to use them to fill your empty half pans, which we could do. And I'll show you this Meaden palette, which I just got from them the other day. And I asked them to send me this because I wanted to say that this is a pan that's supposed to take 48 half pans, and that's what you can do. But you can take that insert out, you can fill it, and you can take it out after it's filled. But then if you want to actually transport your tube paints, you can put them inside this tin, and you can get quite a few in there. They can go in 3 rows. Then you can just close it up, and then you can safely transport them. Let's say, for example, you were going to fly somewhere and you're worried about the pressure in the hold or wherever. I think if you put them in this tin, they would be pretty much protected. And if one of them did leak by any chance, and if you've opened them already and taken some of the paint out, they're not likely to explode, to be quite frank. But they would be safe inside there. They wouldn't go all over your clothes. So, you know, that's just a thought, that this is one way to store tubes. Many people like painting from half pans. I'm not very keen on doing that, but I can see that there is, you know, I do it a lot, but it's not my favorite way of doing it. But anyway, it is a good option. And this is not very expensive. It comes from Meaden. Everything comes from Meaden, doesn't it? I can't help it. And they also sent me this, which is what I'm going to put my paints into today. This is an airtight palette. So when you close the lid, it'll be airtight, and so the paints will stay softer than they otherwise would. It's also got a separate mixing tray. So you've really got a good kit here that you can mix on here, and you can put your paints in here, and you can pre-mix them in the little sloping well. And then you've got this as an extra. So you could mix your warm colours and your cool colours on separate pages, if you like. And I think this is going to work really well. However, it only has 33 spaces. So I've got 40 paints here. And luckily, this is pure coincidence, just by chance, I happen to have 2 of them. I don't know how or why. I mean, they sent me a whole bunch of kits a little while ago, and so all of these turned up. I'm sure they're very glad that I do demonstrate them and use them. And I wouldn't demonstrate and use anything that I didn't like. Now I find, as on opening this one, I have already started to use it. So I'm going to have to change my plan a little bit. I'll start with this one, and I'll probably wash this out because I have no idea what's in there. But you can see how they lay out. And it's a good piece of kit. So I'm going to put that in water and clean it out, and then we'll come back and swatch out the paints. Meanwhile, what we've got here is what I've divided into 2 sets of 20. Just wondering where that one went. 1, 2, 3. Floral and landscape. Right. Yeah, I did this curation, if you like, and I've got 20 which I thought would be most suitable for landscapes, but of course you can use them for anything. And then I've got another 20 which I thought would be most useful for florals. Some of these were chosen or set up by Michelle Weber, who was the first artist on YouTube to use his paints when he was still in the development phase. And he talks about her a little bit in that interview that I was mentioning. She has a set of, I'm not sure if it's 10. You can buy a tin or a set. I'm not sure if it's in a tin or a box. I'm not sure. I think it's in a tin. From his website, which has got things like delphinium and lavender and petal shadow and poppy red and dusty rose and various colours like that, all of which are highly suitable for painting flowers. So I've grabbed a set of those for myself, plus other colours like moss stone green, which is a highly granulating colour, and mulberry and forest shadow, autumn foliage, marigold, lots of evocative names for those colours. This one, for the landscapes, they're more sensible colours, names like French Ultramarine, Perylene Black, Pthalo Blue, Cobalt Blue, Indanthrone Blue, and all of those names that we're very familiar with. So we've got 2 separate themes going on here. One of made-up colours for, a specific, to give you a specific evocative idea, and the other traditional colours that go back many, many years. So what shall I do? I think what I'll do is I'm going to put into this palette some of, if not all, of my landscape set. Okay, so just put these somewhere. I work in quite a small space. So we'll start with the lightest colours, and that is going to be, I think, Buff Titanium is the lightest colour. I haven't used these yet, so I'm just going to put a little bit in the well. And what I should do is now go to my swatch book. This came from Lightbish. I've used it quite a bit for different paints, and I'm getting towards the end of it, but it does work reasonably well. So we'll start, as I put them into here, I'm going to write them on here. Trying to be organised about this. So that's Buff Titanium. Just want to make sure I get this right, because I did this before and I didn't. Right, you're supposed to write the name on here. So we've got Buff Titanium. If you do this kind of thing often enough, it serves the purpose of helping you to learn what names the colours have. And while you're doing it, you could look on the back and find out its permanence, which on this one is AAA, which has got to be the highest level of permanence. So it's not going to fade in the light. No paint will fade a lot. If it's in a sketchbook, it won't fade at all. And unless it's in direct sunlight, it will outlive you, even if you're only 20, before it starts to really fade. I've got paintings that I did in the 70s hanging in my front room, and they haven't faded at all. This is labelled as opaque, and the pigment is titanium dioxide, which is pigment white 6.1. So according to that only has one pigment in it, and it is a kind of white. So we'll trust him on that. The next one I'm going to do is going to be Azo Yellow. And this one looks like this. Azo Yellow doesn't look like yellow, but when we put it into our swatch book, we'll see quite a different colour. And then Raw Sienna is going to come next. Oh, wait a minute. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Cobalt Yellow, Aureolin, which is a bright yellow. It's going to come next. Then we'll put raw sienna, I think. Then we'll put raw sienna. I've tried using this swatch sheet several times and got in a bit of a muddle with it. And I'm hoping that today, if I organise myself like this, I won't. Okay, the next colour to that one is going to be green gold. And if you don't find this interesting, you can always scoot forward to when I actually start painting the colours. But yes, I was incredibly impressed by this young man and his description of how he started his business, because he left school with no qualifications whatsoever. He didn't even have an English or a maths certification, no GCSEs at all. Didn't know what he was going to do with himself. This is Terre Verte. And he was a troublemaker at school, and I can imagine what he was like, having been a teacher of teenagers myself. He must have been an absolute pain in the, you know, what. This is Pthalo Green. But finally, he left school and left his teachers in peace and started to work in factories and to pick up casual jobs and just generally earn enough money to go and get drunk at the weekend. He says all this himself. I'm not making it up. As he said, you know, this is what young people do. He was 16, 17, 18. And after a while of working in factories and things like that, I'm going to switch to blue now. This is French Ultramarine. No, wait a minute. Oh, yes. Landscape set, yes, French Ultramarine. He's obviously clearly very intelligent. And after a while, he got very frustrated. And his younger sister, was studying to become an accountant. And she said to him, why don't you just, before that, he went and got himself an O-level in maths and English, GCSE. So that was pretty good. And then she said to him, why don't you go on the 12-week course and see if it's any good for you? So he did, and he loved it. So he trained and worked as an accountant for 7 years. That is very impressive for a kid that left school with no qualifications whatsoever, I think. I'm impressed anyway. Phthalo Blue, right, this one's Cobalt Blue. And so he worked in an office doing accounts for other businesses and thinking life's got to hold something more interesting than this for me. This one's Indanthrone Blue. That's a dark blue that we all came to know and love from Daniel Smith, I think. That's where I first heard of it anyway. And then one of those funny things happened to him that happens to people sometimes. I'm going to put that black over here, and we'll do that last. So we've done that lot. We're going to do, next is going to be, we'll go to the pinks, I think. Indanthrone Blue. We'll go to, I think maybe we'll have to go to this one actually, Perylene Black. The guy he sat next to in his office was making jewellery to sell on Etsy. And he said to Mark Jackman that he was looking into pigments for his jewellery. And I don't know, it just so happened he got to chatting with his dad about that. And he said, oh, I've got some carbon black pigment in the garage. Maybe he'd be interested in that. So it all sort of went from there. Anthraquinoid Red. He got interested in pigments. The next thing, Anthraquinoid Red. So you have to go and listen to the podcast because I'm not going to tell you any more of the story. After that, the story gets very interesting, I think, because he tells you all sorts of interesting things about the way paints are made, what's in them, how they work, and it's just very, very interesting. So I highly recommend that. That's Pyrrole Red. This is the boring part of swatching, but you can see the colours coming out and how vibrant they are. And they've had a very good reception from the artist community, the professionals. This is burnt sienna. Because for their price, they're outstanding, and he uses top quality gum arabic, not the rubbish that you buy in bottles, and some of the handmade paints that we come across at Sienna, and this one is Potter's Pink, use an inferior quality of gum arabic, but he uses the best quality, filtered to take out all the impurities. And he uses glycerin as his humectant to make sure that he can consistently control the amount of water that the paint takes up when it's sitting in the palette. This is Pyrrole Orange. That's a very bright orange. I don't know that you'd need much of that. And he uses cosmetic grade preservatives for his preservative, because you need preservatives in these paints. Some people use non-cosmetic, which could be perhaps damaging to the skin or whatever, but his won't do any harm. They have nothing, they don't react with anything. So that's natural red oxide. Natural red oxide. And then this one is Pthalo Red. I hope you find it interesting to learn a little bit about the paints that you're using. I knew none of this. And in fact, as it happens, a lot of these things weren't even spoken of. The companies like Winsor & Newton were not falling over themselves to tell people anything about what was inside their paints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19. So we're missing one there. So let's try a bit of this moss stone green just to bring us up to 20. So there we are. And we'll put that over there. So I'm going to move away all of these other colours out of the shop here, and we'll do the swatching today just for the first 20, because I think 40 is too many. It's going to be too long, and I want to get this video up for tonight. So let's just label that. After Naphtha Red, we have Moss Stone Green. And I'm hoping that that is going to be a granulating colour. And if you want to know the secret of granulating colours, you have to go and listen to or read about it somewhere on his website, because he tells the story very well of how they're what they consist of, which is fascinating, I think. I'm going to use a small flat. I'm going to start off using a small flat. I'll warn you now, if this doesn't work and I don't like it when I start using it to swatch, I'll swap to something else. I've got my water. Actually, I'll change that to clean water. He was talking also in his interview about water. It never occurred to me. He said, when he's making paint, you can't use tap water in England because it's full of chemicals, which would subtly change the colour of the pigments. And I wondered to myself whether that might also be true of when you use water from the tap to mix your paints. I don't know, and I'm going to hope that it's not the case, because you could get through an awful lot of distilled water, couldn't you? So in order to swatch this, I'm going to take a reasonably thick blob of paint at the end and paint it. This is what they call mass tone. So where it's basically as thick as it can be. I'll rinse the brush in the dirty water pot, pick up some clean to make sure the brush is clean, and then draw the pigment out, leaving the very end there as mass tone, and then showing how it looks when it gets to the other end of the little section there. And if I was a really finicky person, I would try to keep inside the lines. The line that is going down here on these swatches is supposed to indicate how opaque the paint is. And I have to say that although that's labelled as opaque, once it starts to be diluted down a little bit, it doesn't look particularly opaque at all. So this is a lovely colour for lots of purposes. It's a kind of soft white, and it makes a good mixer if you want something to be a little bit opaque. I think you could use it quite happily for things like sand, if you're painting a beach scene, or any kind of stonework. You could form part of that. If you were painting something like shells, you might find it was an interesting option. And if you mix it in with any of the other transparent colours, of course, it will give them a little bit more body and make them a little bit more opaque, which makes it possible sometimes to paint over another colour. So here we're going to be picking up now a little bit of Azo Yellow, and I'll try to paint the mass tone here, where it almost looks like brown. As I said, it's not as, it doesn't look much like yellow when it's in a lump, but when you pull it out, you've got a lovely colour. I think they'll be very nice for florals. And now we're on Aureolin, which is a light transparent yellow, which mixes with blues to make lovely greens, if you choose not to use ready mixed greens. I feel so privileged to have access to all these wonderful paints, and you can get them direct from their website in England, and they do ship internationally, free shipping if you're in England. And you can also get them from Jackson's, and there's no connection between Mark Jackman and Jackson's other than that they stock his paints. But if you use his website to buy them, you can get an extra 10% off if you use the code Diane10. I think that's right. I'll put it in the description below, and just use that for an extra 10% off. It's a completely family-run business. I don't know how many employees he has, but he's in charge, but it's a family business, a small business, and I think it's wonderful to support small businesses. He fills every tube himself. He makes the paints by hand from scratch, from the beginning, all the way through the process. Each tube is filled literally by hand. He holds a squeezy bottle and he squirts the paint into the tube that you get when you buy his paints. So it's never been anywhere near a big machine. So if that kind of thing matters to you, which it does to me, to know where it's come from and the fact that it's vegan, they're vegan as well. The green gold, look at that. Isn't that a lovely colour? When you pull it out, you're going to get, you could just play like this. When you're feeling really stressed out, just get out your Mark Jackman paints and just paint them out and look at them. And like, it's like a box of sweets. And now we've got Terre Verte, which is number 6 along here. This one. This is an opaque colour, or semi-opaque, I think. I think it probably says that on it. Let me have a look. Don't want to tell you wrong. There it is. Terre Verte, number PG23. Oh, sorry, I was telling you wrong. It's not opaque. This one is transparent. I have had Terre Vertes before that have been opaque. So as he says in his interview, check the labels, learn the pigments, find out what they are, make sure that you're getting the correct pigment that you're looking for and you don't get fobbed off with an imitation, because there are such things. And I think that's important if you care about these things. Of course, not everybody does. Not everyone's got the patience. Not everybody wants to bother with any of that. But if you are wanting to seriously, that is completely different from other Terre Vertes that I have had. Completely different. It's much more delicate and a much more appealing colour than some of the Terre Verte. Terre Verte just means green earth. Now we're on to Pthalo Green, which is this one. And this is a synthetic colour. And he talks about phthalo colours and says that they are very hydrophobic, which means they don't like water in their natural state when the pigment comes to him to use for his manufacturing. And you have to add a special surfactant, like, you know, a detergent type of thing, to break the resistance of the pigment to mixing properly with the gum arabic and all the other the other three things that are in the thing that holds the paint. So that's a very lovely green, actually, when it's stretched out, isn't it? That's very strong, but very synthetic, whereas this green it makes you think immediately of Victorian watercolours, doesn't it? It does me anyway. And this one is French Ultramarine. Notice that there is a difference between French Ultramarine and just regular Ultramarine. Ultramarine is a naturally granulating colour, but they vary, the pigments vary in the amount of granulation that they can do. But that used to be pretty much the only paint that I was aware of that really granulated. And it made lovely granulating skies if that was what you were looking for in your landscapes. But it mixes beautifully with raw sienna, burnt sienna, to make lovely soft greys, which is one of the most popular uses of it. So that's that one. Transparent, I think. Now we have Phthalo Blue, which is the same as Phthalo Green in the sense that it is also hydrophobic. That just means afraid of water. Like when you get rabies, you know. If you get rabies, you become hydrophobic. It's one of the first symptoms. And the dogs that get rabies tend to run away from any sign of water. That's how you know that they've got it. So that's a lovely Phthalo Blue. It's kind of turquoisey kind of colour. Some people like to paint their skies in Phthalo Blue. I feel it's a little bit too artificial, but my sky colour of preference these days is Cobalt Blue, which is this one. It just makes me think immediately of watery English skies, or French ones. And that doesn't have a massive amount of strength in the mass tone. But when you pull it out, it's like, oh, there's a sky happening there. Little mini sky. Now we have Indanthrone Blue, which I always think of Daniel Smith when that comes to mind, because it's a very dark colour that I didn't know how to pronounce for the longest time. It's been around a while now, but yeah, I mean, that looks like almost black. If you added a little bit of red or brown or something to that, you would have something that would double up for black. Then when you pull it out, you've got, again, another sky colour, not as pretty and varied as Cobalt Blue, I don't think, but an interesting colour, isn't it? Now, I don't know what Perylene Black is. What do you think it is? Do you think it's really black? I suppose it probably is. Yeah, it looks like it. Now, the question that springs to mind is, how does it what kind of a grey does it produce when you thin it down? Slightly greenish. I think it says that on the tube. I should have written that down. Perylene Black brackets green. Yes, so I'll just put green there. Anthraquinoid Red is this one. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes. I see that one could easily belong in the poppy selection that I have. That would be poppy selection, flower selection, florals. Yes. Yes, I can see I'm going to want to use that for lovely dark red roses. What do you think? Next colour is Pyrrole Red, which I think I would class as being what we used to call letterbox red or fire engine red. It doesn't get more red than that, does it? A beautiful pure red that will, when mixed with yellows, make beautiful oranges and bananas. No, just kidding. What a lovely even wash that gives with no effort. Now we have burnt sienna, one of my favourite colours. Somewhere between a red and an orange and, well, brown, but yeah. Definitely one of my favourite colours. Now we have Potter's Pink, which was very fashionable a few years ago, and certainly was with me. I advocated it quite strongly, and a lot of people bought it, and I don't think that was a bad application, because it's a very interesting, subtle pink. I think it's probably a mixture of different colours. I should look at it and tell you, shouldn't I? Let's see, what does it say? Semi-transparent, AAA permanence, Potter's Pink. Well, it says it's a single pigment, and that's possible too, because he does mention in his interview that on his website, sorry, he didn't mention it in the interview, but it's on his website, that most of his colours are single pigment. And that so far is true. Everyone I've looked at so far has been a single pigment colour. Why is that important? That's important because if it's a single pigment colour, then it means that when you mix it with another pigment, another tube, you're only mixing two things. Sometimes the colours that you have in your tubes or in your pans have got two and sometimes even three different colours in them. So when you mix them with another, you might end up with four pigments in your mix, and that is going to start looking a little bit greyish or muddy. So not necessarily a brilliant idea. Now we've only got 3 more to go, so we must be up to this one. Nat Red Oxide. What did the nat stand for? Natural? Natural. Natural Red Oxide. It's presumably an iron oxide of some sort. Doesn't look unlike brick red, does it? Traditional brick red that you get on the bricks on the houses in England, that kind of colour. So that's that one. Then we've got Pthalo Red. Which is a synthetic colour, poppy red, really, you could say. I'm sure that that will mix with the other colours on this palette with no problem at all. And then finally, one I added because I'd only managed to get 19 in the end. Moss Stone Green, which I think is... let me see, here it is. This is a mixture of burnt umber, cobalt green and yellow ochre. And I have to say, this one would not necessarily be my favourite colour unless I was going to be doing a lot of mossy stones. I was doing a lot of, that's why I picked it, because I thought, oh, that would be a good colour if it's a landscape. It probably would, actually. I think that might be quite fun to work with, but it's not a pure colour. That is a 3 pigment colour. So there we are. That's our first 20 of our Jackman's paints swatched out. And I think they look very interesting. And the next step when you get a new set of paints like this is to combine them with each other. And you can either do that in a casual way by painting a floral or something like that and using them together. Or if you want to be more systematic, you can go for a systematic swatching session. And I've got one already prepared, which I can't see at the moment. I know it's around somewhere. Yes, here it is. I've taken a sheet of 12 by 9 watercolor paper, cold pressed, because that gives us the best results. And I've just divided it up into even squares. And what I will do, and we can do this together perhaps in a future video, there's a fly keeps landing on my phone and getting in the way. So then what you do is you're going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colours going down, and then another 5 going across, and then you're going to mix them together and you get a systematic chart of the mixtures of these colours. And so that's probably a good idea if you want to actually explore what happens, for example, when you mix. If I can find a piece of paper, I'll show you what I mean. Let's say, for example, I'm going to let you go in a minute, but I'm curious and I just want to find out what happens when you mix, for example, together a couple of the colours that to me are new. Let's see. Well, how about a bit of something really strong? Phthalo Green. No, that's not Phthalo Green. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right, that's Perylene Black. Okay, that's good. We'll go with Perylene Black. And then I will wash off my brush and pick up some Aureolin, which is a yellow, and mix that. And lo and behold, we have a very lovely green. Doesn't that just make you think of fir trees? So then you add a little bit more of the black and you get a darker green. Remember that was Perylene Black brackets green. So it has that green tint to it. Add a little bit more. And we're going to, yes. Now see, this would be brilliant for painting when winter comes rocking around again, when we're painting fir trees and things like that. And if you were to add more yellow, try not to pollute my yellow with too much, to that intense dark green there. I've just added more yellow and a tiny bit of water, and then a bit more yellow still, and I didn't add any water. And you can test what you're going to get by just pulling that out in a bigger way than we did in the little mini swatches there. This is just useful for you to remember what colours are what. A swatch sheet where you do something like this, where you go much more, out, spread it out much more thinly, And then there's more yellow still. Let's go even more. I mean, this Aureolin yellow is quite a weak tinting yellow, I would say, but it does give a lovely blend with this Perylene black. And look, I mean, this is perfect for the leaves of a floral, if you were doing, you know, any kind of leaf thing. Let's see how that works for leaves. Let's wet one of my brushes. Let's just pick up what's in the pot and just brush down. Add a little bit more yellow. Come in with green down here. So you don't need many colours to be able to produce a leafy branch. Just need a bit more of the black with wonderful effects. Lots of different shades of green and so on and so forth. Just from two colours, a yellow and black. And you can drop a little bit more of the dark shadowy colour in there if you want to make the whole thing a little bit more varied. And then you just wait to watch it dry before you do anything else and see what happens. Chances are you'll be quite pleased with what you've created. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for now. I might have a go at, what was in there? I put something in there, didn't I? What was that? That's kind of yucky green, yucky greeny brown colour. Can I improve that colour by adding something like orange to it, do you think? That's very strong, that orange. Pyrrole Orange, I think that was, wasn't it? You do a bit of experimenting, you know. You can't possibly know what's going to happen until you give it a try. This is an oldish kind of brush, actually. It's a little bit soft. So I think I might switch when I do the first painting with this. I might switch to something a bit more resistance to it. I could see that that could work in certain autumnal scenes, you know. It looks very, very earthy, doesn't it? It's quite fun. I probably should wait for that to dry, but I'll just chuck something else in there. Yeah. Anyway, have a play with your paints. What's that? And highly recommend exploring Mark Jackman's information online. That's what I just did. It's nothing special, just to show you how colours can be blended and so on and so forth. There's just a whole slew of information out there. You could spend a lifetime exploring. I think I have, exploring this. There's always something new to see and do and experience. Every time you pick up your paintbrush, it's something different. So anyway, I'll let you go now, and hopefully you enjoyed that, or at least managed to tolerate it and get through to the end. Time for lunch. Got to go shopping this afternoon. Need to buy various different boring things. Dog food, wheels for the lawn, the wheelbarrow, stuff like that. So hope you have a great day. Can't remember what day of the week it is. It's probably Saturday, so have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. And thanks for your support, everybody. Give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you soon. Take care, and hugs to you all. Bye for now. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.